Hi, I'm Dr. Cynthia Clark, acupuncture physician, applied clinical nutritionist, and creator of Energy Evolution with Longevity Wellness in Sarasota, Florida. And today is the day that Irma hits. This hurricane has been rated at Category 5 and was predicted to make landfall at a Category 4. It's 400 miles across, the largest hurricane that anyone in recorded history has seen. During this time, there were a few things that I noticed that some people did really well that helped them stay centered and to keep their priorities. And I thought that this would be a good time to reflect upon those things and to observe what really works in these kinds of super stressful situations where everything around you is going crazy. So I'm just going to be a little extemporaneous and improv this. It's not a super rehearsed because I just want to capture the moment. First is that whenever my dad has a love of aircrafts. He's a aircraft mechanic and he's a pilot and he's an inspector and he's taught other aircraft mechanics. And one of the things that he's always been interested in is plane wrecks, which sounds a little morbid, but you want to know what things go wrong. And one of the things that I picked up from that was that when a plane wrecks, there are so many safety features in place, so many processes that it is never one thing that goes wrong. In actuality, it takes multiple mistakes multiple times. So the average number of fatal mistakes that are made is 7 in order for a plane to wreck. What that means is that most of these things can be really easily avoided, and they happen because people make mistakes. For the most part, they happen because people make mistakes. Okay, and so then how do we avoid making mistakes during times of duress? One of my other loves, I lived in Colorado for a long time and I did a lot of mountaineering. And one of the things that I studied was fatalities on mountains. And interesting piece of information, more fatalities happen as people are coming down from the summit than on their way up. And the reason that happens is because they're tired and because the adrenaline rush of the push, and the success has already happened. And so then we become a little complacent. So fatigue is the time that we tend to make a lot of mistakes. And so it's the time that's actually the most important. Over the past week, Florida's had about a week to prepare for this hurricane. And that means that this is more of a marathon than a sprint. While the hurricane is hitting now, it's about 6:30 on Sunday, and it'll be hitting shortly. I've been preparing for this hurricane since Monday when I found out about it, and I got off of a plane. I went straight to the Walgreens and got about 18 gallons of water. And the lady behind the cash register looked at me and said that I was crazy. She was obviously, a little exacerbated by me. The other people in the store were exacerbated by me getting the storm radio and buying up all the first aid supplies. And to the point where I felt I had to make excuses for my behavior. And so I would just say, I'm from Houston, and Houston has just gone through Hurricane Harvey. So that gave them some compassion for me and gave me permission to do what I needed to do, which was an important thing to do. It's an important thing to be able to do what you need to do with compassion, because it just makes it easier. It's a tough time. Over the next few days, all of the water would be gone from the stores, of course, and it was very important that I got those supplies at that time. So being attentive, keeping the priorities straight, and not making the mistakes, and knowing that we are so prone to make mistakes when we're tired and we're day after day after day of making 10,000 more decisions than we usually make, and doing all sorts of different things. Like I've gotten a crash course in hurricanes and storm surge and storm tide and what happens just before a hurricane. Like just now, all of the water has gotten sucked up out of the ocean. All of the tides are really down right now, and shortly they'll come back in full force. But these are all things that my brain was not remotely focusing on. It's not my area of expertise until it is, right? So I've spent the last week communicating with many people that I don't usually communicate with, even just doing a lot more communicating than I usually do. So different parts of my brain are activated. Because of that, I know that I'm more prone to make poor decisions. And because of that, I'm careful to check my decisions with people who are expert on the situation, also who are smart and knowledgeable and not exhausted and tired. So before I was about to go to a meeting with many strangers in the building that I'm staying with, I called someone and I said, okay, I think these are the things that we need to run through: communications, medical resources, what we're going to do about fuel, how we're going to pool resources, because I'm not expert in organizing a group of strangers in disaster relief. And the fact that I knew that and I knew to ask for help at that time really helped, so that I was able to ask a question about preserving medication so that the person's insulin can be kept cold for several days, which otherwise would have been missed. So knowing your blind spots and not being prideful about them, like just knowing that, pilots have checklists. So it's important to have a checklist. It's important to write down what's important, and it's important to keep track of it and keep eyes on it and make sure you're doing the things that are important to do, because it's so easy during these times for us to be exhausted. I sat down earlier today to write my list, and I lost my list while I was writing it because I'm just hurricane brained. I'm just brain fatigued. And in fact, the list was next to me on the couch, but it's just on the other side of something. I couldn't see it, just because mostly I was tired. So knowing that I'm tired, knowing that I need to write lists, knowing that my brain isn't accustomed to making all of these decisions or communicating with all these people, or having to have conversations about safety and potentially life-affecting safety, it all really taxes the brain a lot. So the next thing is I've been careful about my nutrition during this time. There have been a few things that I've done differently, but mostly I've had the same foods that I usually do, the same good quality foods that I usually do all of the time. I made sure to be eating good cooked foods, because raw foods can be a little bit more difficult to digest. But the most important thing is make sure that I'm eating good food and not potato chips and pretzels and crackers and a bunch of junk that's going to keep me from thinking clearly. In fact, this is a lot like training. It's a lot like triathlon training. It's a lot like kung fu training, a lot like rock climbing. If I want to make sure that I have a good day, then I'm going to make sure that I'm thinking clearly and my body is performing at its peak ability. I'm tired and I'm exhausted, so I know that I'm physically weaker and I know that I'm mentally weaker. But by knowing that, I can plan ahead for that, and I can have the resources that I need to the best of my ability for that. Another thing that's I'm a big science fiction fan. In fact, I read almost exclusively science fiction in my young adult years, and I wish I could remember which book it was. I remember a line from a book about spaceship etiquette, and it was talking about the importance of politeness and manners and the little niceties when on a spaceship, right? Because these people were stuck there for years, and it was the conversation was about, is it really important? I mean, you know each other so well. Is it really important to be so formal when you're stuck on this spaceship together for 9 years or whatever it was? And the character's response, the spaceman's response was, it's far more so. When stuck in close quarters with people who are all going through duress and difficult times, it's very, very, very important time to really be kind to one another and compassionate, and of course also compassionate with yourself. And if you lose your temper or your emotions flare, to be patient and to forgive yourself, and to to extend that same loving kindness to the people around you, to say all of your please and thank yous from the bottom of your heart, and really, really, really mean it, because everyone here is really doing, humans really care about each other. Humans are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. If you look at the news report on a regular basis, it looks like we're terrible, horrible humans. But the truth of the matter is that 99% of the time, we do wonderful things and we care about our fellow neighbors. And, one of the side benefits of a storm, of a natural catastrophe like this, is that we tend to see that side of our neighbors, of humans more. And it's a really beautiful time. I don't know anybody in this building that I'm in that wouldn't open their door to even a complete stranger that needed a place to stay during a storm, because it's just basic human goodness, and it's there all the time, but this is the moment when things like that are tested, and it's really uplifting and beautiful to participate in. I also just want to acknowledge that the storm that's, I'm at the end of, let's see, it's Sunday, and I've been doing hurricane prep since Monday, and that means I haven't slept very much. I've worked hard out in the hot sun, and so have many of my friends. We're all kind of exhausted, and this is just beginning, and it's entirely possible that we're going to be without power for many days, that we're going to be flooded for many days, either out in the streets so that we aren't able to get around, or within even possibly our own domiciles. So I just allowed myself to take a little disco nap and to be ready and to be prepared for a long night, because I understand that this is going to be several days of needing to stay centered and balanced. Which brings me to my next observation, which is that in the midst of sorting through all of the information that comes floating in, all of the constant news reports, all of the information from other people, all of the information from people around the country that, most of the time our friends and loved ones are being helpful, but occasionally they say and do things that are absolutely not helpful and they don't realize till later. Some of my friends have put out etiquette on what not to say to people who are in Florida right now. Like, number one is something like, if you were smart, you would have gotten out of there already. Don't say that to a Floridian. There's reasons that we're here. And, I'm here because of my mom. And I wouldn't be anywhere else on the planet because my mom is here and that's where I was supposed to be. So, everyone's doing different things for their own reasons. But in the midst of all of this information that's sorting around, it's really, really, really important to stay centered and to stay focused and to know one's own truth. There's a really great show called The Heist by an English mentalist, hypnotist, whose name is Darren Brown. And over the course of this show, which is several episodes, he actually takes a group of mid-level managers through a theoretical training course. The idea is that he's teaching them to become more successful, but during this whole time, he's actually programming them. And the program that he's exposing them to is such that when a particular moment comes where they are exposed to an opportunity, and this particular opportunity is that an armored car drives by, they rob the armored car. These are people with no criminal background that would never before in their lives have done anything like this. And yet, seemingly out of the blue, they turn into a criminal and they rob an armored car in broad daylight in the middle of the street. He had 4 candidates that made it through the top levels of his training course that were the most susceptible. And 3 of the 4 candidates, when posed with the opportunity, did actually rob the armored car. Now he immediately diffused the situation. They immediately brought them into a safe place. He immediately deprogrammed them. But only one man resisted in the face of craziness and in the face of all of this bizarre things that his brain had been exposed to. Only one man resisted, and it's because when asked why, he was able to stay true to himself, true to his own principles, true to his own truth, because he knew who he was. And it's so much, and that's so very much happening here, that there's so much information floating around. There's so much pressure on everyone telling everyone what to do, that really taking the time to be with oneself through prayer, through meditation, through sitting and being and breathing, and allowing yourself to know your own truth makes all the difference in the world. For me, that answer in part was where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing. And over the next several days, things are going to get even more difficult. So if the first week was not doing a sprint but running a marathon, then the next week that we're about to come into is probably going to be doing an Ironman rather than a marathon. We're going to be going through a lot together, and keeping one's own center is really, really, really important during that. So the mental training is just as important as the physical training and the nutrition. Having a little bit of quiet time, every day I've taken time to go be by myself, to go be away from everything else that was happening, and just to sit and have some quiet time, which is really important when the television is always on, the news reports are always coming in, information that we have to stay attentive to, but being centered and focused and just having a breather. I would take my meals away from the television so that there was time to digest them and make sure that my body was functioning properly. And so then after that is making sure that the body is functioning properly. I know my body pretty well, and I know what's likely to give out at certain times. So I absolutely have my standard process supplements with me. I absolutely have my Chinese herbal formulas with me, and I am absolutely taking those things. It's absolutely critical to my body's healthy functioning and to making sure that I'm able to stay centered and aware and making good decisions and able to help all the people that I want to help. So those things are critically important. And then, finally, being sure to be doing what it is that you most want to do. Having that checklist of priorities and returning to it. I have had a little pad of paper by me every moment for the last couple of days, and anything that I wanted to make sure I remembered, I put down on that list. And yesterday I wrote down eat lunch because I knew that was something that I was possibly likely to forget. So, of course, all my love to everyone during this time. But for now and for the future, these are, it's a unique vantage point to observe the world around right now, and to see who fares well in this, we all have our ups and downs. So it's really like, when are the moments that we fare well, and when are the moments that are challenging for us? And so I hope this helps. Hopefully some of you out there now, I hope this helps me in the future, because there's going to be a time that I'm going to play this back over and go, now what was that list I made of the important things to keep in mind during duress? Physical activity has also been really healthy and helpful for me. I've been able to get some runs in. Of course, not all my triathlon training. Might have opportunity for a really challenging open water swim here shortly. I'm just kidding. Never swim in that. It is horribly dangerous. There's all sorts of bacteria and crud. And by the way, it turns out that if you have any open wound, absolutely stay away from all of that water, because it is so rife with bacteria that it's very, very easy to get infected, and actually a fair number of deaths happen that way. So don't do that at all. Don't do that at all. Just kidding. Don't do that at all. And finally, I just want to say, I have felt so grateful. Hello, Irma. To all of the people that have been so helpful and so supportive and so generous of their time, and my friends around the country that would just stop what they were doing and talk to me for a moment as I would need to go through a plan or get my head straight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the people here that have been incredibly generous with their time and their resources in helping me to get ready for this. I'm from Houston, and it really makes me feel like all the good people in my hometown are out in the world. I've always said best thing about Houston was the people. People are absolutely amazing and absolutely wonderful, and I find the same in Florida. So it's just incredibly grateful to my very generous mom who's weathering the storm with me, and we're going through this together. I'm incredibly grateful to the people in Sarasota, to the complete stranger that I met on the plane who helped me board my house and pick up OSB kind of in the middle of the night, to the neighbor who ran out in the rainstorm to turn my power off to make sure I wasn't going to electrocute my neighbors. Just to all of the people that have been so helpful and so generous, and I know that we're gonna all be going through a lot in the next week. So thanking everyone in advance, and really thanking everyone for all of their continued prayers and their continued well wishes for this area, because we need it, and we really appreciate it. So take care of yourselves.